We do 15 minutes of Game Day Uncensored. That's brought to you by the Lexus RX, the luxury SUV for those who never want to lose their edge. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. This is just an interesting question that was raised to Elaine or Alan Poupart. I never know how to pronounce his name. How is it, Solana?
Alan Poupart.
Alan Poupart. It's Canadian. It gets me every time.
It's not Canadian.
Yeah, he is
Canadian.
Actually French-Canadian.
I know Alan. He's a Canadian?
He rocks
Why do you say it like he's from Sierra Leone? Canadian.
I'm sorry. He's Canadian?
You know, my wife works for a Canadian company, and she got a Christmas gift for her boss. We walk over to the post office today. Like to send this to Canada. They go, we can't. Canadian postal workers are on strike. We're not allowed to accept anything going to Canada.
Well, they're sending it to Quebec.
Well, that's Canada.
Oh. Maybe that's trying to fudge the system.
Well, we just took it to the UPS store. They're allowed but the Canadian postal. So I texted Rob Pizzola. And I go, hey, why didn't you tell me the Canadian postal workers were on strike? And he goes, I can't imagine how that didn't come up on the show yesterday. He truly hates me.
He does.
Really does. Anyway, Alan Poupart does a kind of a mailbag, Dolphins mailbag on si.com.
Mm-hmm.
And someone emailed in. I thought it was kind of a good question. What's your best argument to fire Chris Grier? And what's your best argument to keep him?
Best argument to fire Chris Grier easily is the quarterback situation.
The backup quarterback situation.
Yeah, the backup quarterback. Yeah, to have Skylar Thompson and then panic and Huntley comes in. You already have Tim Boyle. Now you're going to practice squad. That's the easy answer for the firing. The keeping is that he's drafted some hellified players and brought in Tyreek, brought in Waddle, drafted Robert Hunt, even though he let him go, drafted Christian Wilkins, brought in Teron Armstead, Jonnu Smith. Like, I could probably argue more keep him than not, but the quarterback.
I mean, isn't he responsible for actually getting Tyreek Hill too?
That's what I was going to say.
Forget about drafting, I mean, he's put together a pretty hellified roster.
Tyreek, Teron Armstead, Calais Campbell, Jalen Ramsey, re-signing Jalen Ramsey. Just we have a very talented roster. But there's some missing. Austin Jackson would be a pushback. Like I can name, if I really think about it, I can name a number of players on both sides. But the worst thing, if they fire him, number one on the list would be the backup quarterback situation.
Because you literally gave away 3 games.
You did. There was no chance to win. And you drafted and you sold us Skylar Thompson for 3 years. That was too long for you really to believe that this guy was going to be a legitimate player in the NFL.
This is what Alan wrote at SI. I looked at the Chris Grier situation in depth in a recent column you can check out. But the Reader's Digest version is my best argument for keeping him, is that the Dolphins made the playoffs each of the past 2 seasons and had a shot at the number 1 seed in the AFC when they went to Baltimore in week 17. So it's not like they're that far away. The best argument against Grier is he had an immense amount of capital, both draft picks and finances, to go get high-priced veterans when the rebuilding started in 2019 and 20, and we're still waiting for that elusive playoff win.
Yeah. No.
It's fair on both sides. Like, you're super close. Like, you've been right there. And
I'm gonna sound like Hog.
It's
I'm gonna
December
sound like
12th.
Solana.
You're still in the playoff hunt.
And it's Solana's point, and I've argued with Solana on this point. You're not right there. We're not playing football in December, January with the Bills, with the Ravens, with the Chiefs. We're not. We've played. It's not even speculation. The Chiefs have beat us in December and January twice last season. The Bills whoop our ass every time we play them in December. Lamar Jackson runs through us and beats us by 40 whenever Baltimore plays the Dolphins. Are we close when I can name 3 teams that y'all would never bet against if the Dolphins play them? How close are you?
I feel like they're closer than what you're laying out, even though what you're laying out is true. I do. I just feel like they're closer.
How close are we? That's you know what? And I got to go higher than Chris Grier. We're talking to Stephen Ross's point. Stephen Ross has to figure out what side of this is he on, because I don't think we're that close to the Bills, the Ravens, and the Chiefs.
Would you keep him? Chris Grier. You have to make the decision now.
Man, that's my personal friend, Hoch.
I would keep him. He's not my friend. I would keep him.
The definition of insanity.
But you're not doing the same thing over and over. You're close. You suffered a terrible injury and you were unprepared for it this season. But that seems to me like something easily correctable.
And 2 years ago, when we went to the playoffs, Tua was hurt again and Skyler had to play. And Skyler is not that guy.
That's what I'm saying. But it's easily correctable.
What? Don't let Tua
get a better backup quarterback.
He's had chances. If he's been there 4 years, 5 years, I'm with you. Chris Grier recruited me and worked me out, came to Gainesville when I was coming out in 2005. He's been with the organization for 20 plus years.
Rocks the suit and the hat, though.
I know. He's Donnie Spragan. I love him as a human being. He's a smart, intelligent, hardworking man. I just don't know if his GM grade was a SAT. I don't think he's a 14-20.
Solana, would you keep him or get rid of him?
Man, I hate saying, hey, fire X person, but I don't know how you keep him after this year. I really don't. I thought we all established easy, simple expectations for the team this year. Year 3, McDaniel, Tua, the quarterback he handpicked, and the coach he handpicked. And if you don't make the playoffs and you don't win a playoff game, which was literally the bar, even though we were all saying Super Bowl.
But you're not allowing some sort of caveat for injury?
I think you can, but I think at this point, year 6 of a total rebuild, and you're still not anywhere closer to where you were when Chris Grier fully took this entire operation over. Fully.
You don't think they're closer?
Hawk, I mean, do you
I'm not saying that they've won. I'm saying you don't think they're closer.
Are they a better team than they were when Brian Flores first took over? Sure. But are they actually closer to contending, in my opinion? No. Are they close to being Super Bowl contenders? I don't think they are.
With this roster, if everybody was healthy with Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Ramsey, Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb.
Everybody's never going to get healthy.
Well,
Jalen Phillips was an amazing acquisition. But I honestly, and Bradley had a window. I think the Bradley Chubb trade and giving him that big deal was a mistake. But on top of that, like now I'm going through it in my mind as we talk. Devon Achane is not supposed to be one of the top rated running backs in the NFL. If you looked at him coming out, and Devon's a monster.
So that's a plus for Chris Grier.
Oh, there's pros and cons on both sides. How couldn't you keep Christian Wilkins? How couldn't you keep Robert Hunt, who went and got $100 million?
Andrew Van Ginkel,
who was not a lot of money. Like there's both sides of it.
But what has he done?
He's not a terrible GM, but has he made us better? Like I think are we getting worse? To your point, are we getting worse? Are we getting better? Or are we just waiting? I think we might be just floating.
You're in the worst spot you want to be in, which is close enough to feel like you're there, but not actually a serious suitor to get to the
closer than that. See, I think they're closer than that, though. I just think things have gone against them this season. Injuries mostly.
Hawk, take the Dolphins out of it. Take our fandom out of it. A general manager who's had 6 years, starting with a full rebuild.
I get it in a vacuum. I'm just telling you, if you make wholesale changes now, I believe you're a lot closer than you guys are laying out. So if you make wholesale changes now, you're saying it didn't work. And I'm saying I still think this can work.
But maybe it takes another mind to come in with the core, with the base, and say, you know what? What can't we do in the most important months of football? Run the football, right?
What was the biggest problem? But what was the biggest problem this season? The backup quarterback. Go address that. Here you go. Go get a good backup quarterback, and we've addressed the biggest problem from this season.
That's not the biggest. That's the biggest problem, but it's not the only problem. You didn't address offensive line concerns, defensive line concerns. The Dolphins can't run the football right now. They have a combined less than 100 yards in their last 2 games, and that's a direct component of your offensive line not being good enough. And if you want to say injuries,
they weren't
fine.
built to be a running team. They just weren't.
When you say 6, you mean 6 with what? Because he's been here 9.
Right, but
as GM.
GM 9. No, he's been here since 2016 as GM.
Right.
No,
but remember,
there was that guy from Tampa that came down.
No,
he
2016. I'm looking at Wikipedia. 2016. We're resetting his thing when Flores came in. He's been here for 9 years as the GM.
Yeah, but he didn't have like sole ownership of decision making from 16 to like 18. He didn't. There were I don't remember who else was in charge. But remember there was like that whole
the glasses, the white dude with the glasses. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, like there was somebody else who was there also overseeing things with Chris Grier. When the Dolphins,
I feel like his name was Hickey.
Brian Hickey.
Is that what it was?
Dennis Hickey.
Dennis Hickey.
Dennis Hickey. Glasses. He had glasses.
When
I'm just telling y'all facts. Man had glasses.
No, we just sound like crazy people.
Okay.
Yeah. When the Dolphins decided to rebuild, hire Brian Flores, that is when Chris Grier took over the reins of control of the Dolphins front office. He was calling the shots.
Dennis Hickey is younger than me.
That's not hard. Half the world's younger than you.
That's kind of shocking, isn't it? He was the Dolphins general manager 2014 to 15. So then Chris Grier took over in 16?
16 to 24.
All right. That is a long time.
And there are some home run grand slams, and there are some dribble it to first and pick the ball up and touch first base.
But I think that's true of any GM.
It is, but if I would be interested to see if you go back and look at the top teams right now. I'll just bring up the AFC. If you look at the Chiefs, if you look at the Bills, you look at the Ravens. Are there as many first base dribbles as there are home runs?
But even look at other teams around the NFL. I'll use the Lions. I'll use the Texans. How many teams in a shorter amount of time have turned things around and are now competing?
But do you think the Lions are so superiorly constructed to the Dolphins?
On the offensive line, absolutely. 100%. They built their team and said, we're going to win up front. And the Dolphins didn't. The Dolphins said, we're going to go get
No one touched Tua last week. No one touched him. It's true. No one touched him.
But you can run the football, Hawk. They're the worst team. Worst team over 3 years.
What I'm saying is you can't denigrate the offensive line as if they're turnstiles if there's no pressure on the QB.
Of course you can, because Tua's getting the ball out in under 2 seconds quicker than anybody else in the NFL, which masks the clear issues that the offensive line has had. It's the same thing that happened last year. They look good on paper, but they don't grade out well. The interior, Liam Eichenberg on one side. I mean, Kendall Lamb can't even play right now at right tackle. And you're going
He's injured.
No, Austin Jackson's injured.
Kendall Lamb was concussed.
Yeah.
You went over that with Gino.
To this point, Kendall Lamb's getting his ass knocked out. Austin Jackson moved positions 5 times. Teron Armstead gets hurt every other game. Liam Eichenberg has receding hairline. Whatever you want to say. Connor Williams from a couple years ago. I would tell you this, Hawk, to answer your question a second ago. The Ravens roster and the Lions roster are championship rosters. They've constructed those two teams to be championship-style rosters. And I know it. I've seen it. The Ravens did it since Ozzie Newsome. They pick up hard-nosed, butt-kicking football players that are going to play in their style and play in their scheme. The scheme hasn't changed. John Harbaugh's been there for years. They know what they're going to do and they want to do year in and year out. The Dolphins have constructed a very graceful, tricky, cutesy team and a cutesy roster that has a lot of talent, but I don't know if they can play like we've seen in December and January, like the Lions roster, like even the Buffalo roster I won't bring up because they've dropped even though they've been playing well. But the Lions and the Ravens roster, go look at how they're constructed, and I think that's championship mode of what they've put together year after year after year.